back to Awkward Insurance. It's still summer here in the South, which means it's hotter than the devil's armpit outside. But I'm excited for this episode. I'm pretty sure it's going to run itself because of the two people that I have on this episode with me. So I might just mute myself and take a seat in the back and just watch what happens. We have the great and lovely Ashley Fitzsimmons as a co-host with us today. Welcome back to Awkward Insurance, Ash. How are you?
I am fantastic. I'm so excited to be back here. I wasn't sure if after the first one that I did with you, if I'd ever be asked back again.
Well, I mean, they asked me not to ask you back, but I was like, screw that. No, I'm kidding. No, we love Ashley Fitzsimmons around these parts. I don't know who doesn't. Does anybody, Tracy, do you know anybody that doesn't know or love Ashley Fitzsimmons?
Not that I know of. Not whatsoever.
So you also heard the other amazing voice of Tracy Lee Cotton. I can never have her on a show without saying her entire full given name, Tracy Lee Cotton. So we have an AFTLC episode today, and I am so excited for it.
AFTLC.
How long have we been friends? And I never noticed that your initials were TLC, even though I call you Tracy Lee Cotton. That's one of my favorite television channels, TLC.
TLC. There you go.
My daughter's initials are MLB. We did not do that on purpose.
How about that?
I mean, it happened.
My uncle's initials are WTF. Just found that out the other day.
So it's really hot outside. What's it like in Ohio, Ash?
It is equally hot here. We just ate lunch outside. It's about 91 degrees. But I like it. I can't complain. And while we were eating lunch, I saw my now husband walking the dogs through the park. And I texted him and said, hey, because, we were only 20 yards away. I could have just yelled his name, but he had his headphones in. So we watched him walk all the way up the park with the dogs, all the way back down, 20 feet away, 20 yards away. Never saw us.
Ashley, you said my new husband, and my brain just fried all of a sudden because I just realized that we have gotten an episode with single Ash, engaged Ash, and married Ash.
I totally forgot about that. That's awesome. I know. I'm
so excited.
Marriage is awesome. Nothing has changed. In fact, really the only thing
everything changes.
No, I mean, really the only thing I gained from marriage is 12 pounds in the last month and a half. Other than that, everything has kind of stayed the same.
Congratulations on your marriage. How was the wedding? How much risk management thoughts came into your mind while you were standing in your beautiful white gown?
A lot of them did, because I had 2 liability policies because one wasn't enough for me. So I had to get 2.
2?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yep. And everything went smooth. No one went diving for koi fish in the pond. No plants were hurt in the conservatory during this wedding. So it was all good.
Nature was not hurt in the making of this wedding. Well, I am really excited to have you guys on the show. I know there is a specific reason why I really wanted to have Tracy back on the show. I hope she brings all the spit and fire for this conversation because I think it's a necessary one. I know it's a soapbox of hers right now, but let's catch up with Tracy for just a second. What's going on in TLC's world?
It's hot here also. I know that primarily because I'm on day 42 of 75 hard. And that means every day I work out twice, 45 minutes each, at least one outdoors. And outdoors is someplace that I grew up not wanting to be. Now, that changed. It changed years ago, and I've spent a lot of time outdoors. But I didn't usually voluntarily do it in the very heat of the day, which is the only time I really have free to do my second workout, and that's when I usually walk at lunch. So I just came off my walk. I'm a little sweaty, but it felt good. It was only about 90 degrees, and
you're not sweaty. You have an essence.
Yes,
it's called your essence.
You're glistening.
I'm glistening, but when I can say it felt pretty good at 90 degrees, and I don't know when I ever saw it. I never said that before. That's a real accomplishment, I think. And that's one of the things, of course, that comes out of doing something like this, where you kind of grow used to things that you didn't think that you would get used to. I don't know why I thought about doing this in the middle of the summer to begin with, but once I did, I realized I was committed to it. And that's...
We all make choices that we sometimes regret.
We do.
We have to follow through with them.
And it's been a really adventuresome summer. I've had a lot of opportunities to get out and enjoy outdoors in Chattanooga. I've been biking and stand-up paddling, and in a couple of weeks, I'm going to do kayaking through a dam, through a lock. It's going to be
Are
fun.
you going to teach me any of this when we do the little women's retreat in Tennessee?
Oh, I'm totally up for that. Totally up for that. So
somebody's bringing paddle boards, right? Don't I remember that from our group chat?
I think Julie.
Yeah, Julie.
Julie Brindle
I'm so excited.
So she's fantastic. She's the one that took me the first time. We went as part of my 50 for 50. Julie had volunteered and said, I think you need to do stand-up paddling as part of your 50 for 50. Now, I will mention that Ash suggested that I do pole dancing, and she didn't offer to come with me.
I mean, I would have.
And I did do pole dancing. But Julie said, let's do it together. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, we could do it when we go to Agency Elevate in New Orleans. So we went paddleboarding through a bayou together. And that's my very first experience paddleboarding, which I was scared to death of falling off, and there may be alligators and all those other things, but I didn't fall. And she's the one that took me. So she's going to be there this September. And I think she's planning on bringing hers because she's got the ones that you can inflate. They fold up and you can put them in the back of your SUV and stuff like that.
A bayou says alligators, snakes, leeches. Are leeches in murky water?
Probably.
Can we find a clear water source to have these lessons in?
Like a pool.
Yes.
Well, and so that's the thing is I won't guarantee that the Tennessee River is super clear, but it's a lot better than it used to be. And there's a lot of good eco species. One of my things I did just recently was I got to help release the sturgeons from the Tennessee Aquarium into the river. And I got to hold a little baby sturgeon and put it in, and it was amazing. It was like holding a little baby dinosaur.
You are such a dynamic human being. I hope I'm like you when I grow up, because I still have a lot of growing up to do.
Well, that's kind of the point, though, is that's become something that just, that's become part of who I am, is that I'm just not going to wait around until I have the time and the money. I'm not going to wait till I retire to do these things that I've always wanted to do.
Right. Every time, I don't have to ask to spend money, so don't take this out of context, but I usually do try to bounce my ideas off my husband because I'm hoping he'll actually tell me no and rein in my impulses every once in a while, because I am an impulse spender like nobody's business. But every time I come up with an impulse buy that's just totally random and sometimes doesn't even make sense, he's like, well, you can't take the money with you when you go. So sure. And I'm like, no, you were supposed to say no. I told you we were on a budget. No. And he's like, all right, then no. And I'm like, but it's really cool. I want it.
Make up your mind, Dustin.
I know. He's constantly like, whatever you want to do. And I'm like, no, I need somebody that can ground this desire of mine. But you're right. You can't take it with you when you go if you're constantly waiting to make those memories. But that is the point. The point is that I still have a lot of growing up to do. That's part of our conversation today, is that I think, let's talk about our generations. I don't think we have to give up our ages. But I'm a millennial, but on the older side of what is considered a millennial. So I tend to harness Gen X traits as well when it comes to both personal and professional life type situations. So it's kind of, I feel like I'm a chameleon at times because I can be what I need to be when I want to be it or have to be it. Whoever I'm talking to, if I'm talking to an older generation person, then I tend to go more Gen X. If I'm talking to a younger generation person, then I tend to act like I'm 16 too. It is what it is. Ash, you're a millennial. Where are you at on the millennial scale of things?
I think I'm on the older end of the millennial scale, and I definitely have like Gen X stuff in me. Like, yeah, I like technology and things, but like I still want to do things face to face, and that throws people sometimes. Like I want to go and see people in person, or I want to talk to somebody on a phone.
You want to talk on a phone? Tracy, you talk on phones, don't you?
Not much.
No.
But with clients though? But even with clients, you're not a big phone person?
No. So we, I do, but the funny thing is working in commercial insurance, I learned a long time ago that really, even some of the old school ones, there was other ways of communicating with them. And if we could figure out what would work, depending on just how comfortable they were, that they don't want to be bothered a lot of times during the workday either. And so if we can communicate another way through text or email, that works out a lot better on the commercial side. But when I was in personal lines, absolutely. I mean, it was definitely, voice to voice was, the very, was, very common. And then of course, face-to-face, was still very much a thing. That's just one thing that kind of that's a recent change, I think, that we've seen, is that we're just not seeing as much face-to-face, but it's not because they might not want to. It's just to be on the side of caution. And, and some clients just, maybe, are just, maybe out of the habit now.
Do you keep your ear to the wall for any personal lines professionals in your office? Are they still doing voice to voice? Is that what you called it? Voice to voice communication? Or are they maybe do you guys utilize text messaging at all in your client interactions?
They don't really, I don't think, in personal lines, but I unfortunately don't get to spend much time with them because they're literally in a whole nother city. So because we've got various locations and kind of the way that it just got spread out, most of our personal lines is based out of Calhoun, Georgia, and I'm all the way up in Chattanooga.
So where do you fall on this generational scale or spectrum, if you will?
So I am a Gen X. And actually, I say Gen X. Am I actually still Gen X, or am I the very end of the baby boomers? I don't remember where the cutoff is. I'd have to look that up. Does anybody know what the...
I don't know. We can Google real quick. Producer Mac, would you Google it? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay. No, I'm good. I'm actually good because it started, and this, of course, will tell my age, but mid to late 60s. And it was the starting of the Gen X. And so I'm in that category.
Wait, that was the start of Gen X? What are millennials? And
so it goes
millennials start like 1983.
No, I thought you meant like Gen Xers are now in their mid to late 60s. That's when it started. I'm like, that's not right. I know how old Tracy is. That is not right.
No, the generally defined as people born from 65 to 1980.
I got
is Gen X.
Okay.
Yeah. And then millennials start kind of like early 1980s. There's a variance between whether or not people believe that it started 1980 or 1985, but that's kind of like the start of millennial. So I'm on the older edge of that millennial spectrum. But the reason why we're asking, or the reason why I'm asking about our generational, is because we have two millennials here and kind of close to the Gen X, and then one Gen X kind of close to the baby boomers. So our personality traits, our dynamics, and even our career paths are at different stages. And there's a huge thing right now, the great resignation, the low talent pool, whatever you want to call it. There's tons of topics everywhere. And a lot of people, when we get up and even here at the National Alliance, we're focused on getting young talent interested in insurance because our industry is aging. But there's another dialogue to have with that. We are spending a lot of time focused on getting younger professionals into the industry, but that doesn't come without the accidental, maybe forgotten generations of our industry. And that's kind of the hot topic that we want to talk about today. And I know this is really kind of a platform that you really like to speak on, because we do have a talent shortage, and we did have the Great Resignation. And I don't think the Great Resignation is not just for the insurance industry. There are several business industries out there that have been affected by the Great Resignation. So there are effectively older Gen Xers or younger baby boomers, or maybe even still kind of the middle of the mark baby boomers that are in the workforce, and you would think that they're close to retirement, but they're not interested in retirement, and they're kind of being forgotten.
Yeah, I would definitely say that that's the case, and I've thought about it some since we decided that we would talk about this, and I've got mixed emotions, because I remember it's been almost 10 years ago that I was a consultant for a while for a digital media company that did some consulting in the independent insurance space. And I had flown out to California, and I was in an agency in Anaheim. And this particular agency that has been completely successful. So I'm not going to give away names, but if you ever were to kind of like look around, you could probably figure this out. They're based out of Anaheim, and they've got, like the patriarchs and the family are still in. And then we've got the younger guys. And then we've got all these account managers who are also really close to the age of the patriarchs. I mean, like if we put it that way, if we start talking about these baby boomers, there was probably half a dozen account managers and those type of servicers that were also in that same older age bracket. And going in as a consultant, I saw that we had these younger, like really on fire, really, really just bright and brilliant. I mean, like brilliant folks that were coming in and trying to take the agency on to the next level. I mean, because we're talking about 10 years ago, so we're talking about trying to get the website, trying to get all of the automation going, and they were just stuck at that point because they were struggling. They could not get the people in the office to buy into getting rid of paper. They couldn't get everybody up to speed per se on the agency management system. It was a sticking point for them that they were running into these issues. And I, as a consultant, was like, you're going to have to make some hard decisions. I'm not saying you got to boot everybody out, but you've got to start figuring out a way to be able to make these things happen. You can't let them stop you from going where you're going. And it really, I mean, it was with the blessing of the agency owners that really wanted to kind of pass things on. They were okay with it, but it was really the people almost in the middle that were going to be most affected by it, literally speaking, because all their jobs. And they were very close. Like they were all almost all of them were within 5 years of retirement. There was a couple of them, though, that you could tell they could have gone 5 years ago, 10 years ago. They had stayed around because they wanted to. And we've seen that. I mean, I've been part of that. I've seen that in agencies where you had a few people who just stuck around and kept working because, maybe the benefits were really good. They didn't have anything else better to do. They liked what they did. And that's all great, except when you run into that wall of, if you aren't willing to keep learning, if you're not willing to keep going as the rest of this goes, and we know what's happened in the last 10 years. It's been a tsunami, if you will, of change that a lot of people have struggled with. And
a tsunami of change in terms of the insurance industry, like the insurtech and all that? Or are we just talking about technology in general, where paper is out the window? Where
technology in general, probably, just because that was, that's been, even the companies who are, some of them still a little archaic at times, have embraced more than some people could handle.
I'm not sure, though. You said something about if you're not willing to learn, or I'm not sure it's not an unwillingness to learn, though, as much as they're just, we as humans, honestly, our brains can only hold so much.
Yeah.
and the older you get, the slower your brain may process things. So I don't know that it's always an unwillingness to changes. Maybe it's just you're to the point. It's kind of, I think of it this way. It's like music. You, as a young person, you accept all kinds of music and you listen to all kinds of music. There comes a day where you start bitching. I'm sorry. Complaining
true.
about the music, about today's music,
yep.
Because it's just not it. But everybody else is like, no, this is like the stuff, there just comes a point in our brains where we're just not, it's just not capable to, I don't know, maybe evolve any further.
But she also brings up a good point, though, because it's not only that. I think she hit the nail on the head with a lot of issues that I see in agencies where, yes, we need technology and we need to move forward, but you need to find a better way of presenting that technology within the agency, because you still need those people that have been there for 15, 20, 30 years or whatever, because they have so much knowledge. All that technology is going to do you no good if you don't know how to actually do the insurance aspect or side of things, or the relational side of things. So it's just like, how do you spin it in a way that, hey, yes, it's new and yes, it's change, but it's going to benefit you and it's going to save you time. And then it's going to give me more time to learn from you. Because I think a lot of people just come in and say, yep, let's fix this. Let's change this. This is new. This is shiny. And they just kind of forget to explain.
Well, and I don't even know that was the case. Literally in the agency that I came from just a couple of years ago, two people that I just deeply admired. One that had been in personal lines with me back when I was still in. She had stayed the rest of her career in personal lines. She just was one of those ones that she was an account manager and she loved it. And she had her path. And when they came up and decided to make the next change, and it was a big change. They actually went from Sajida, which was a Vertafore product, and not really a Vertafore product. It was a very old product that had come from way before that. And they changed over to Applied, and they were going to Epic. And an agency management system change is painful for everyone, but it was especially painful
no matter how technologically advanced you are.
Absolutely. And I think that just for her, and then also for the receptionist at the time, because they were also doing some changes to the voice over IP changes, and they were doing all this in the agency that I came from. with that, both of them decided to go ahead and take retirement. And they were on the lower end, like they didn't really, it wasn't really time for them necessarily, but they opted voluntarily to make those changes. And I respected that. I didn't feel like they felt forced out. But at the same time, when you realize that there's all these things that I also see on the other end, because like I said, I've got mixed feelings about that. If you've got all these programs that are geared towards getting younger people involved in insurance, and there's not anything really on the other end of how do we keep people from just leaping out at some point in time because they don't see what, how they're going to still benefit because, they're not going to, they just don't see necessarily the same benefits. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I mean, needless to say,
I don't even see it as a leaping out either, not having the program on the other side to keep everyone engaged. I also, having trouble with the words here. Traditionally in the past, in terms of a resume, a stable resume was desired. Somebody who's had a long working history, been at one particular, maybe 2 or 3 companies over an extended period of time, right? Now, particularly with Gen Zers, it's more commonplace and almost seen in a favorable light at times I'm going to say that they describe it as being dynamic or versatile, that they've been able to move from one job placement to another because they see it as building on their experience rather than not being stable in their experience, I guess. So in that same light, though, people do like variety. And sometimes you stagnate a little bit and you're like, what else is there? So it's not just keeping the older generations or mid-career generations engaged. It's also like, well, what if I don't want to be with this agency anymore? And this agency, even over here in this state, because I'd actually like a change of scenery and still want to do the insurance thing. I've seen on social media where somebody who's been in the industry for 20 years, which is not too far off from where I'm at, and doesn't feel possible that 20 years is considered like experience for me. Anyways, that they've been trying to find another job in another location just because they wanted a change, and they can't find it because they're considered the older generation and there's more focus on the younger generation in terms of job applicants, if you will. That's another concern.
Which blows my mind because everyone complains about the lack of people wanting to come and work in insurance. At this point, if you have history and you know what you're doing, come work for us for 5 years. You know what I mean? That blows my mind that somebody is struggling to get a job in the insurance industry somewhere else because I feel like there's such a talent shortage, regardless of age.
I feel like it blows my mind too, but I've seen it too often. And honestly, when I think about it, it's almost like it's kind of like when my husband won't commit to whether or not I should or shouldn't spend the money that I want to spend. It's like, well, I can see the benefits of both. Well, we would like to have somebody that might be in the younger generation because maybe they're not going to age out of the industry as, whereas somebody who's been in the industry for a while, but you don't know the future anyways. That, that younger generation person, like I said, it's honestly, it looks more favorable to them if they've got 3 years here, 3 years there, 3 years here, 3. So, I mean, saying that you're going to hire them because then they would be with you for longer, that's not a surefire thing either. So anyways, that I hadn't thought about that perspective, though, to be honest with you, until I got on the phone with you a couple of months ago, Tracy, and you were telling me about, I don't even know how we even freaking got on the subject, to be honest with you. But then you were like, you got a little fired up where you're like, the older generations are being forgotten. We want jobs too. We want to be able to transition to something else too, not just, So that's why I was like, I think we need to have this conversation because yes, we do need to place an emphasis on a younger generation, but we don't need to not place an emphasis on an experienced generation either.
Well, I mean, it's really 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. If you're looking at the idea of, and this is what it is because what you're saying, Dustin, is you're referring back to the idea, what you're talking about. The people, we think that when we hire somebody that's younger, we're going to get longevity. And that's absolutely not guaranteed, especially with that generation. And that's not a slight. That's just the reality. And I actually look at that and think that's probably not a bad idea. I know that because of the changes that I've been through in my career, I got to a certain point where I realized that you didn't have to stay somewhere forever. And that was actually freeing for me, because at that point I really had felt like, oh, wow, I'm not going to be able to stay at the same place forever. Like, I thought that was what you were supposed to do, because that was, again,
that's the boomer mentality. I know you're Gen X, but that's the boomer generation professional mentality.
It's the boomer mentality, and that stability and all these things, all these words that sound good. But then you also realize that, that's just not necessarily reality, especially in the insurance industry, because agencies get bought out. And, they get bought out. And once they get bought out, because you may actually go and work for a 50, 100-year-old agency that, I don't think that hope I'm not in that same boat, but I know some people who have been in those kind of boats. They thought that agency was going to be around forever. And then one of the larger national brokerages bought them out. And then they became part of this big, big thing. And they aren't happy because they lost the feel of that family atmosphere and all the things that they had always had. And so you can't bank on it that way either. But I hear what you're saying about this particular individual who's looking, and that's probably what they're running into somebody looking at the resume. And if they look at the resume and they go, this resume goes back this far, this means this person has a lot of experience, but that also means they're near the end of their career.
Right, near the end of their career. And then goes back to what you were talking about, how some people that are kind of in that middle mark, right, or closer to retirement, and what we were just talking about, that it's not maybe necessarily an unwillingness to learn new things, but maybe just kind of being stuck in what is comfortable for us. I think that's a better way to describe it.
I just don't, because there's no easy answer on that, because I recognize that it is, you're betting either way. You got to bet on that personality and that individual, if they can get that far. And that's what I'm hearing is probably the issue. They're not getting past the resume phase. And that upsets me. That literally just bothers me, because when it becomes strictly a number of, are you 23 or 53? And which one do you prefer? And there's a preference there. That just absolutely just shakes me to the core, knowing what somebody who's 53 can bring to the table with the right personality. And I say that because I do recognize that that's that there has to be some willingness to be part of a new team, being willing to kind of forget maybe some of the old stuff that they knew, because that's the thing, a lot of times, I'm seeing this more in our industry, that people are coming into it and saying, we don't necessarily have, somebody doesn't have to have experience, but we definitely want them to be able to do this, that, and the other. And that's good, because that used to be something that I harped on a lot. We can bring somebody in who's in sales or service from the banking industry, from the mortgage industry, especially now. That's a great place to poach from now. But if you could bring them in from another industry where they already have that similar experience, you can teach them insurance. However, there comes a point in time when teaching insurance is doable, but isn't it great to have people who are within your agency that you can also count on to give really good examples of how insurance works, because they've seen what's happened and know how the industry changes, so they can help maybe somebody else who doesn't know how the big companies work, can kind of navigate those.
Yeah.
And also just maybe a little bit more patience and perseverance, because they've maybe been through a little bit more. And those are all things that I think that, those are all the things. There's lots of other things I know that they can bring to the table, but those are some of the things that if you're only going by a resume and you're only looking at as age as a number, you're absolutely going to miss out on great candidates every time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a good point. Understanding the current job seeking market in terms of everything, not just insurance, and understanding how your resume translates there. And I've done this with Gamma Iota Sigma, the National Fraternal Organization for Insurance and Risk Management. And I adore it. But I went to their conferences and volunteered to review resumes. Well, of course, these are all college students. And my focus for them, because they don't have a work history, or they may have internship histories, but they're not exactly sure how those internships might translate into the insurance industry, I have them focus on their transferable skills. With an older generation, with an older workforce, when you're updating your resume, when you're doing those resume reviews, which I hope you've done them in the last year or so, correct me if you feel otherwise. I feel like their focus needs to be on making sure their resume says, I'm not stuck. I can learn new things. I am adaptable. If you catch what I'm saying. And also, my experience means I'm going to be a awesome mentor for the younger folks that you may be hiring. So hire both of us kind of situation. That mentorship piece is really going, and the adaptability piece, both of those combined together are really going to make that person, that resume, a standout or scream, I'm going to be an asset within your agency or within your company.
I think that that's a brilliant idea. And I had not thought of that. I know that having been through change just within the last 2 years, I already knew how you go in and you can adapt to, you already have an idea of what the job entails, and you can go back and you can kind of highlight certain aspects of your experience to try and maximize on those points that are going to be most valuable to the position you're looking to be hired for. But the idea of also making it relevant and really showing that willingness to make those kind of changes, that you have learned multiple systems, or that you have, you've had opportunities to spend time in different technologies. That really is, a great idea, because I think that would go a long ways. I would hope that it would go a long ways for somebody who is looking to hire.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking on the piece of the mentorship, have you ever thought about becoming a faculty member and giving back your knowledge?
So that, I think,
she's got a smile on her face. I think that's a yes.
It's a good idea, and that right there to me would probably be extremely rewarding. And I don't mean from a financial standpoint, but I love the idea, because I had some of the most fantastic educators when I was in North Carolina. I've seen a couple of good ones here in Tennessee, but unfortunately, because the transition happened during the time that we were having to do everything virtual, I missed out on some of that here in Tennessee so far. But they've put on some good programs. But I just know that if I enjoy that much, and I know how impactful, especially when I was first getting my CIC, that one of the faculty was, just one of my favorites. I mean, I think the world of Terry Tadlock. He's an excellent teacher. And I think, but I also got, to see some of the other big names that are starting to, that's the thing is, so that group that I admired, they were a little older, most of them. And they're now not doing as much or retiring, and those spaces are going to be available. And wouldn't that probably be a good place for, for somebody like me, or like somebody else like me, to think about how to give back?
We just want you. That's okay.
Oh, well, I'll take that.
I would like to say, speaking of people teaching, that you two this year have had the highest attended Wednesday webinars at OIA. And God bless her. I should.
You two, the singing group?
You two, the singing group. You and Tracy. And I should have never told Tracy beforehand, because I'm like, wow. I looked at the number. I'm like, Tracy, I forget what the number was. It was like 110 or something. And she goes, oh, no pressure. I'm like, whoops, I probably should have told you that afterwards, not before you were going on.
That's amazing.
Yeah. The only thing that's better about that is and I think that y'all probably both know this, is that when you're presenting now in this atmosphere, it makes things more difficult because you don't know if you're engaging. But it makes things a little bit easier because you don't see the vast number of faces. But I absolutely, from a public speaking and teaching aspect, miss being able to have the eye contact, see somebody nodding, see somebody's face light up when they're getting something. And that part I missed. But knowing there was that many people was a little daunting right at first. And I try to just forget about that.
Thank you for bringing that up. Anything as we are wrapping up? Ash, anything you've got to say, or Tracy?
Thank you, Tracy, for dropping all of your knowledge on us. I was sitting here taking notes. I was Googling things. I was looking at designations for you. I'm like, well, maybe I could send her this one. So, I mean, thanks for having me on, guys. I enjoyed the conversation. I just like listening because I feel like I learned so much from both of you.
Well, it's always a pleasure to be on with both of y'all as well. I think that the only thing that I would encourage is that from folks that are hiring, and I know they might not be the ones that are necessarily listening to this podcast, but definitely, if you can pass the word along that, looking at those resumes and really recognizing what all that experience can bring to the table and not be put off by that, as well as just for anybody who might be still in the industry and getting to that age range that you're really wondering, am I going to get passed over because I've passed my prime? And I would absolutely encourage you not to feel that way. And that if you're in an agency that feels that way, keep working there, because obviously, you've got the job right there, but be looking, because there is more opportunity out there. I really think that there are more opportunities than we even consider. And from a long distance standpoint, even if you can work remote, that might give you opportunities that you had not before. And for some folks, because they really, I think, were thinking about retirement because they just wanted to go out and live a little bit more. There's WHVE, the WAVE program, where you could have, somebody who's a VA that happens to be retired or no longer working in the industry, and they're still, a licensed insurance account manager. Those folks are still getting some ground. And I think there's lots of other opportunities. You have to be open to it.
One final thought for me, you said if you're in an agency where you are feeling stuck or feeling like you're past your prime, keep the job, but then be looking. I would also encourage, be vocal in your agency about how you're feeling, because it's kind of the same even as a working mother in business or anything. A lot of times people make assumptions about us that we can't do this or we can't travel here or whatever because we are our mothers. And we get pigeonholed, if you will. So same thing. Somebody might think, oh, you're close to retirement. You're probably not looking for something else. If you're looking for something else to do, if you want to be challenged, seriously tell your leadership that you want to be challenged. There's nothing that's going to hurt you by saying, I'm a little bored. What else can I do? Anyways, that's all I had to say after that. You don't always have to jump ship just to get what you want. You can stay where you are as long as you're vocal. If they're not listening to you, then jump ship, whatever. But thank you so much for your time today, Ash Fitz and Tracy Lee Cotton, AF and TLC. I was trying to find a clever way to spin that. And TLC, what the AF, or, whatever. Thank you so much, as always. Toodles.
See ya.
Thanks for hanging around and listening to another awkward conversation in insurance. Stay tuned for new episodes from Awkward Insurance wherever you listen to your podcasts. And be sure to check out the National Alliance on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or at scic.com. Now go forth and be awkward. Toodles!